Hello and welcome back. Well, today I'm going to turn a simple box really, but this is a special box. Our club supports a number of charities, and one of the charities is called the Beads of Courage. Beads of Courage is a thing for kids who are going through cancer treatment. So every time they have a procedure, they receive a bead. And some kids have hundreds of beads all strung up and they put them around their neck. And those kids have huge courage to be able to go through all of those procedures. However, sadly, some kids do not make it. And in those cases, the organisation provide the parents with a glass butterfly. Now, this was traditionally just given to the parents, but we thought it would be good to make wooden boxes so the glass butterflies could be put in the box and then given to the parents. So that's what today's project is all about, making a butterfly box. I have written out the instructions here. There are minimum dimensions for the larger butterfly box and the standard butterfly box, but we're going to make the larger butterfly box today. Now I have this piece of wood here. I'm not entirely sure what it is, but that's what we're going to use for the butterfly box. There is some loose bark on this piece of wood, so we really need to get that removed. We don't want this piece of wood spinning around on the lathe and bits of bark flying off at us. And you'll also see on this piece of wood there are some soft bits, probably a bit of rot crept in there. But I think we can find a piece that will be suitable for our wooden box. I mark out an area that doesn't have any rot in it. Then that's taken over on the bandsaw and that square is cut out. It's always best to use a push stick when the wood is really close to the blade. The last thing you want to do is start chopping off a finger. Once I got the square cut out, I put the block of wood up on its end and I just flattened off the top because that was curved a little bit. Just like most traditional wood turning projects, which start off as a square, we need to find the center. And that's easily done by just drawing across in the middle from corner to corner. Then I use an awl to make a mark or a little divot in the wood, and that's where my drive center or tailstock center will be located. To save making too much of a mess and to save a little bit of time, I'm marking out from the center a circle that fits into the block. And then I take it over to the bandsaw to cut out the circle. A drive center goes in the headstock and a rotating center in the tailstock. Then we can mount the piece of wood between centers. Bring up the tool rest, give it a spin to make sure nothing's going to hit there, and we can start turning our piece of wood. I'm making a tenon at this end so I can mount this end into a chuck. I've got to make sure it's nice and flat. Then that is put into the chuck and the chuck is put onto the headstock. Then I can do the same to the other end where I need to make a tenon here as well for a chuck. Check the size, that looks good. This here is a parting tool jig that I made. It uses a very thin metal lathe parting blade. And if you want, you can go and see how I made this special parting tool. A piece of wood is parted so that we have a bottom and we have a top. Now you'll notice here that I'm just sort of clearing the chips out and I actually get to the bottom of the blade. This is quite a long blade, but I actually get to the bottom, so I have to finish that off with a saw. I have the large piece for the box that's in the chuck now, and I start by cleaning the surface off, making sure it's flat, and then I can hollow it out. That takes a little while. This has been sped up a little bit. This here is the Zorin Burger by Timberley box hollowing tool. We can do the bottom of the box and actually come up the side of the box as well. That's quite a good tool, and it saves you getting in there with scrapers and risking tear out and all that sort of stuff. Once all the hollowing is done, the inside of the box is sanded, and you'll see that I start off with power sanding, and then I move to hand sanding. And I do this in between the grits, and that makes it easy to see that you've removed the previous grit. That is the inside of the box all done. Now we're going to work on the top. This is the same process as before, making it nice and flat across the surface to start with. I measure out where I need to cut the recess, and then I use a parting tool to cut down that recess. And you'll see here that I'm trying to sort of slowly creep up on the size. It takes quite a few iterations, but I assure you I do get there in the end. Once we have the box fitting the lid, then we can hollow out the lid a little bit in the center here. There's not much material to take away. You can see here there's a few lines and stuff in there as well, which I need to tidy up with a scraper later on. Once that's done, we're into sanding again, and of course up through all the grits, alternating between power sanding and hand sanding. I've put some tissue paper here in between the lid and the box. That stops the lid and the box separating, and we're going to start on the outside here and make that all true, and then we'll go across the front and take that tenon off. So just carefully taking small cuts here just to get the box and the lid true and smooth on the sides. Then the sides are sanded. Now one way to hide that seam line is to use a point of the skew and put a groove in there. I've put 2 in there just to make it look like there's supposed to be 2 lines. Then I use the burning wire to blacken those lines and finish off with a little bit of sandpaper. That is the outside pretty much complete. The next step is to shape the lid and to remove the tenon from the lid. You'll notice here that I'm cutting in towards the chuck. That reduces any sideways pressure where the lid might come off. The lid is finished off with some sanding again. I did put a bit of blue tape here just for some extra insurance when I took away the tailstock. The lid comes off, kind of like that. And there's our little tissue paper. And the lid is a nice loose fit, as what the guys at our wood turning club suggest. I now have the box on a vacuum chuck with the tailstock, and again I'm cutting in towards the chuck and then doing little light cuts across the face. I've taken away the tailstock just to get rid of the little nub, and then we get into the last bit of sanding, and I make sure it's a little concave in there as well so that it sits flat on a table. It's really cool when you turn the vacuum cleaner off and this thing just drops off. The box and the lid are complete, and then I spray them with a lacquer, and that really makes that grain pop out. And there it is, the finished item, a butterfly box. Unfortunately, it's usually given to parents when their child has passed away, but it's a donation from our wood turning club to the Beads of Courage organisation. I hope everyone has a great day, and once again, thanks for watching.